Expect fair and equitable relationships
Right.
being built out of this, and that's what's happened.
Yeah.
So they've taken us seriously
Yeah.
because they realize the collectivity has power to it.
Tell me the story about when you first started and the bank that turned you down. They weren't accepted. How you came up with the covenant, the, the covenants that you wrote between the banks and CBG, and how all that rolled out.
Yeah, well, we actually ended up, of course, as I like to share with people, not a paradigm shift, but we actually created a new paradigm. Simply because most of the banks up until that point, really it had been so one-sided that indeed when we went into the bank and we inquired about a mortgage or a loan request, they peppered us with questions. But now that we were looking to develop a relationship with the banks on a partnership basis, we asked the questions. We asked the questions.
Flipping the script, as the young
Absolutely,
folks say.
because we wanted to know how many African Americans do you have working for you, and not simply at the teller level. That's an honorable position,
Yeah.
but we also wanted to know, what about at the mid-level?
Right.
What about senior management? How many African Americans? We also wanted to know, how many loans have you made to African Americans in the previous year with mortgages for black businesses?
Yeah.
And so we asked some hard questions.
Yeah.
We scored the banks, if you will. We ranked them.
Wow.
And that's how we made the determination as to whether or not who was going to be worthy to be a partner with us within the faith community.
Right.
So we chose them. Having done that, it took us almost 3 years to complete that process,
Wow.
from 1992 until 1995. There were a couple of banks that were very large banks
Yeah.
that wanted to, quite frankly, change, modify, shift the structure within the covenant agreement. We said, no, this is the way it looks. If you're not willing to sign this covenant agreement as we prepared it, so be it. And so one of the big banks decided not to sign it. Interestingly enough, the day that we had our covenant signing, we had 600 people at a local church. And we said to the parishioners that were there, now, if you are banking someplace other than these partnering banks, we are encouraging you to take your money out of those banks and put it into the banks that are participating with us. 2 weeks after we had this covenant signing, we had the president of one of the banks that would not sign with us come to my office. And when he came down, and we exchanged the pleasantries, but then after that he wanted to know whether or not they could be reconsidered. This was 2 weeks after we had signed the covenant with some other banks. And I looked at him and I said, sure. His smile got so large, and then I kind of got rid of his smile when I said 3 years from now.
Wow.
He said, what do you mean? I said, well, 2 weeks ago, we had 4 banks that were willing to sign a covenant agreement, the same one you refused to sign.
Right.
And I said, now, we've got to be people of integrity.
That's right.
That relationship is to be for 3 years with those banks that agreed to sign the agreement. And we're going to honor that. Now, if you'd like to be reconsidered 3 years from now, we'll be happy to do so.
Wow.
Interestingly enough, 3 years later, there was a new
bet you they
president.
got
Well,
in.
and not only that, but there was a new
new
president of
president.
that bank. And when they signed the agreement 3 years later, the new president said that when I came to the bank and I'd heard about this relationship and this entity called the Collective Banking Group, he said, I told our senior staff, whatever it takes,
Man.
we're going to sign it the next time it becomes available.
Wow. What a story. What a story. And what a victory. And it's not just a one-sided thing. It's a two-sided. I mean, it's a win-win, like you said. And the banks understood. Unfortunately, that one bank didn't get it until it was too late. But they got in 3 years later, right? That's just an excellent way to I just can't say enough about it. I mean, the power of the collective is just so strong. And I just have been encouraging black folks, especially around the country for years, to look at that and then to take action in that regard. That we need to pool our resources, both financial and intellectual resources, to, for the benefit of the collective. And we have to understand that, change our minds from this scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. And I think too often we think there's not enough. We think, it's a zero-sum game. If you get $1, that's $1 I can't get. And I think the collective banking group has done so much to change, like you said, to change that whole paradigm, to let folks understand there's enough out here for all of it. And how can we call ourselves God's people and not think abundance?
I agree with you. And of course, the other issue is that for most of us, we did not grow up in an environment
Right.
that really talked about finances, did not talk about
Right.
estate planning, retirement planning.
Mhm.
But the reality is that in the world in which we live now, you got to do that.
Better do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so what we do beyond even encouraging the churches and members of our churches to have a better relationship with the bank, we actually have, as you well know, annual economic empowerment conferences.
Yeah.
We also have workshops that are going on throughout the year
Mhm.
to help people to understand about good credit, how to maintain it, how to reduce one's level of debt,
Yeah, yes.
especially in the world in which we live
Yes,
now,
yes.
how to manage that home and take care of it once you're in it from
Mhm.
a financial standpoint. So we want to really empower people economically
Right.
and to gain a sense of financial literacy. Because again, if people know how to literally take care of a checkbook,
Right.
oftentimes people just write the check and don't think about the implications if you
Right.
don't really
Yeah.
manage that at the end of the month. But so we want to make sure that we're teaching people all of those things and a whole lot more in terms of the marketplace. Again, we go to stores and we don't even really pay attention oftentimes when they say, would you like cash or credit? And then we buy into it when they say, well, you can get a credit card today.
Yeah, 15%
And so you get
off
10%
if you
off
get the- yeah,
today,
yeah.
not realizing that if they get home and take a look at what it means for their purchases later on, and
Yeah,
there's a
or the
16% interest rate
Yeah.
every time they buy something on
Yeah.
interest, and
Yeah.
then only paying the minimum
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
that bill when they get it.
Mhm.
And I have to really kind of bring people into a world of reality when I tell them that if you take a $1,000 credit card bill and all you do is to pay the minimum and you're paying 15% interest rate, and all you do is to make the minimum payment, by the time you try to pay off that $1,000, it would end up that you have really paid to that institution over $6,000, yes, and then would not have paid off that bill for 6.5 years.
Man.
So people
Just
just need to know all
$1,000.
of these things. That's
Yeah,
right, thinking that
yeah.
it was only $1,000.
Right, right. Turned out to be 6,000.
Mhm.
Man, that's the kind of education we need. And of course, our event that we're doing, and as I said to the audience, it'll be over by the time they see this. But those who couldn't go will know that that's part of the education that we're bringing to this seminar that we're going to do. And it's going to be continuous. It's just not going to be a flash in the pan, one-time thing. We're going to continue to do it here in Cincinnati with our chapter. And that's a good segue into how you came to change your name and change your vision and to widen the scope of services that you're involved with the CBG.
Well, we came to realize that indeed there had been a real evolution within our group. While we started initially because of the need to interface with the banks and get better rates and services, over time we were doing other things to really impact the membership of our churches. For example, we've developed strategic partnerships with businesses, primarily African American owned businesses. And as a result of that, we have created value for our members. But then secondly, we've been involved in some of the political activities because again, we know that even after Sunday, the kinds of activities that are taking place within the capital of Maryland, as well as I'm sure the same thing here in Ohio, have serious implications for our members.
Right.
And so we've gotten involved and we've made connections so that we've become aware of impending legislation that will have an impact on the African American community so that we can best respond to that. Case in point, 3 years ago, there was an attempt to have slot machines come into Maryland. We literally had on one particular day 2,000 people from the collective banking group at the time
Man.
to go to Annapolis, the state capital, and to go and sit in on committee hearings and to visit our state legislators and pose the hard question to them, where do you stand on the issue of slots? And it was amazing to see how some of those legislators got real nervous when we told them that if you vote a particular way, we'll remember you when it comes to election time.
250,000.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So it worked. We've also been looking at health-related issues.
Right.
So we realized that there was a whole lot more to empowering people beyond just looking at the banks. And so we realized it was time for a shift. And so for us, last December in 2010, we officially changed the name from Collective Banking Group to Collective Empowerment Group. That way it really gives us enough latitude to
That's
look
right.
at a whole range of ways in which we want to be able to affect change for the people in our community.
Yeah, that is so important to expand as you grow. I mean, you've grown. You've been around 15 years or more, and you've grown to a point now where you can deal with a lot more
Right.
than you did at first. And that, but one stat that stands out to me is the dollar amount of business loans you guys have generated since you've been in existence. I heard the number, but you can tell us what
Well,
it is.
since 1995, and it's interesting because this works.
Yeah.
People are just amazed when I go and visit other cities and how did you do that? But it works. To know full well that now we've got individuals that are going to banks and been doing so since 1995 in our area, seeking mortgages,
Right.
and in the case of businesses, to be able to get access to credit, and even for our churches to be able to build daycare facilities and senior housing. The churches, through its members, through businesses and the churches themselves, have now generated over $300 million in loans to be able to have those kinds of activities created.
Man.
So it works.
Wow.
And it's made the landscape in the Prince George's County, Maryland area, the literal landscape has changed
I bet.
because of the Collective Empowerment
Right.
Group.
Right.
Things that were not there before, vacant lots,
Right.
old dilapidated buildings. They've changed all of a sudden now with a brand new face, brand new interior,
Yeah.
simply because members of our churches or the churches or indeed people that had an old dilapidated house were now able to upgrade
Right.
simply because they've had access to capital to make it happen.
That's the key.
Over $300 million.
$300 million. That's absolutely amazing.
And the other thing, Jim, to realize is that, as you well know, for most people in America, the way that they've been able to create wealth is through the equity in their homes.
Right.
And so even now, even in this down economy, the mortgages that the members of our church have been able to secure, and the member churches of the Collective Empowerment Group, even over these last 2.5, 3 years, were not subprime loans.
There you go.
But they got safe, secure mortgages, and indeed those that may be challenged right now. But the fact of the matter is, with our workshops, with our seminars, we're able to assist homeowners in making sure that they've got the tools that they need in order to be able to stay in their homes.
There you go. Yeah. It's about sustainability.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I read a stat or heard it on the news maybe a year or two ago that Prince George's County is the richest county among black folks in this country.
That is correct.
I would surmise that the collective banking group had a lot to do with that.
Well, and it is not only that, because it's interesting, because 20 years ago, Prince George's County was majority white. It is the only county in America where when it switched and it became majority black, income did not go down, it went up.
Wow.
It went up, and I'm so delighted to know that, yes, in many ways, the Collective Empowerment Group has played a part in that
Yeah.
because of the higher rate of home ownership now,
Right.
but also the number of black businesses
Yes.
that have emerged, again, through some of the efforts that we've been able to put
Right.
forth through the Collective
Right.
Empowerment
Right.
Group.
And that's what really makes a community. Something else we talk about a lot. I mean, we can have new housing, but if we don't have any businesses,
Right.
if people have to leave where they live and go and spend their money someplace else, you really can't call that a community. It's a neighborhood, as Dr. Claude Anderson says all the time. But we really have to have a cadre of services, a cadre of economic initiatives or entities, and have some input and some control over the political environment where we live. And the CEG does all of that, because I know at a couple of your meetings, you had like a senator came and high level politicians, a governor once, and he calls you and he brings issues and programs to you and all of that. That's political influence that has been derived from the power of the Collective Empowerment Group.
Well, as a matter of fact, the current governor has actually been to a series of our events,
Yeah.
both United States senators from Maryland, The congresspersons from the immediate suburban Maryland area have all participated in some of our workshops over the years. So you're absolutely right. That's been a major part of what we've done. And so we are very, very well known, even in the state of Maryland. There is a concern about foreclosure rates,
Yeah.
but again, the elected officials have capitalized upon the fact that the Collective Empowerment Group has a way of getting information into the pews, into our sanctuaries. And so we've actually gotten funding from the state of Maryland to help distribute information, printed materials, for our members to help them to avoid and staving off foreclosure.
Right.
So they recognize the power of our ability to be able to disseminate information.
Exactly. Again, a win-win situation.
Absolutely, yeah. So it's worked over and over and over again.
Tell us about the management or the administration of the CBG, and how it works and how you have your meetings and your different functions and events.
Well, we have monthly meetings for the pastors and also someone designated by the pastor to join him or her at the meetings, because and each one of those meetings, it is packed filled with so much valuable information. We have an opportunity to have the senior banking officials there,
Right.
owners of the businesses are there, so they're interacting, and at each one of the meetings we'll have a spotlight on one of the banks.
Okay.
They have an opportunity to come
speak.
forward and give some information about updated products and services that they're making available specifically to the members of the CEG. And likewise, we'll spotlight one of the strategic partners to do the same thing. So that's happening every month. And the interesting thing is, in our case, we now have 150 churches that are part of our chapter. We average around 75 to 80 pastors and one of the other representatives of the church to come out. And I would like to stress, as you well know, Jim, if there are egos, and I suspect that there are, but those egos are left at the door.
Yes, that's so important. Yeah.
The other thing that I really found about what we do when we have those meetings, we have one pastor in particular that has said repeatedly that he has never sought a loan from one of the banks, never even had an interest in securing a loan, but for him, he's talked about the power of being able to come together and how he gleans so much information by sitting there
Coming
with
to the
other
meeting.
pastors
Yeah.
and gaining information. His congregation is 75 members, but Jim, his congregation now has the largest reentry program for people coming out of the correctional facilities
Wow.
in the state of Maryland.
Man, 75 members.
75 members, but to know the kind of impact that his one church has been able to achieve, largely because he's had a chance to talk and partner with
Yeah,
other
right.
churches,
That's what it's all
but
about.
also be able to talk to the governor
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other elected officials, so he's been able to now access grants and other revenue from both the public and the private sector to be able to benefit those coming out of the penal institutions.
Wow.
So it's
that's
more than
impressive.
just interfacing with the banks.
Right. It's much
And-
more than just trying to get a loan from a bank. Yes, yes.
And it's really making a difference in our communities. What an
Uh-huh.
impact.
Yeah.
And so quite frankly, oftentimes, we've got people that have heard about the Collective Empowerment Group by hearing about it on a show like this one,
Uh-huh.
or hearing about it on the radio, and sometimes they're going to their pastor and say, Pastor, how come we're not
There
a
you
part
go.
of the Collective Empowerment